Good to see you all, and hope you're doing well. I'm going to do a little bit of the parasha. Okay, this week's parasha, in Hebrew it's called Bamidbar, which is the book called Bamidbar means the desert, and there's a lot of reasons why. It's an experience in the desert. In English, they call it numbers, which is not really what they should call it because it's not what it's called. But they call it numbers because it does start with the counting of the Jewish people. All right. And the first question is, why count them? God knows how many we are. Right? God's talking to Moses, talking to Moshe, knows how many Jews there are, and how many people there are. Why do you have to count them? What's the purpose of counting? That's question number one. Now, and also, there was a way that traditionally the Jews used to count, which was they would not count people 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They would give a half coin. And the half coin, what would happen is that you would then count the half coins. So, if you had, 10, if you had, 10 half coins, and you had 10 coins, $10, you had 20 people because everyone gave a half a coin. So that was the traditional way to count. And I want to try to explain to you why. Why was that the traditional way to count the people? All right, that's going to be question one. Now, the truth is, in this week's Torah portion, it is a great debate if that's how they counted the people. Because it doesn't say that. It says, lig Google otam, which means according to their heads, a head count, which seems to imply that it's really not the normal way of counting with the coin. Okay? So there's a lot of questions. Why count? And how do they count? And is this count different than other counts? What's the purpose of this count? And then I want to get to something that's very important because we have to understand it, but there's a very strange phenomenon in this week's Torah portion, which is that the Jews are given flags. Flags, degel. Degel in modern Hebrew is a flag. And it's a very strange thing, but what they're given is the special way that they can camp. There was the tabernacle in the middle, and then there were 3 tribes all around the tabernacle on all 4 sides, the 12 tribes. And the Levites were divided, and the Kohanim were divided in the inner circle. By the way, I don't know if you could see it, but I once saw, you guys live in many of you live in Houston, so imagine you all heard of Vendell Jones, right? Vendell Jones was the original Indiana Jones, right? Indiana Jones was based on a true, real person, a guy named Vendell Jones, who used to go on archaeological digs and found a lot of amazing things. And I once saw an aerial shot of a place they were digging, and they saw that was when the Jews first encamped, when they came into the land of Israel with the tabernacle in the middle, and you could see from the aerial shot the spaces for each tribe, the 3 tribes on all 4 sides. So there was like a group, let's say these 3 tribes are one camp, those 3 tribes and other ones, those 2 tribes and other 3 tribes and other ones. And they each have their own flag, and they're each in a different section. And somehow this flag business is very important. And I want to tell you actually, to understand how important it is, it says that when the flags, why they want these flags, it says that it goes back to a very, very amazing story. It says that when God gave the Torah, so Jews saw the angels, and the angels were in this like encampment of groups like flags, and they wanted it too. So this can't just mean a little flag like you and I have. This must mean something significant because they wanted something that the angels themselves had, and they said, oh, we really want that. And then this week's Torah portion are given these flags for the groups, the 3, 3, 3, and 3. What is that? All right, so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So first point is, why the counting? God knows how many there are. Okay, but then you could say, because God knows how many there are, but he wants us to do certain things. I understand that. You could say that. But the reality is that the Jews were counted only 6 months earlier. 6 months earlier, they were counted after the plague of, after the sin of the golden calf, and people died, and they counted. God wanted to count to show how many remain. Of course, he knows, but he wants to show that you're still an important entity, you're still there, every one of you is valuable. So why do they want to count here? So the great commentary Rashi tells us because it was time for God to reside his presence on the Jewish people. This is, they built the tabernacle, and now is a new big moment. And it's a time where God's presence will reside on the Jewish people, and therefore God wants to count the people to show they're all dear. Okay, I can understand that. It makes sense. But there are numerous issues with this. Issue number one, and this is a big, big issue, is that when the tabernacle was inaugurated? It was inaugurated on the first day of the month of Nisan, usually in April. But the count happens on the first day of the next month, the month of Iyar. So, wait a minute. If the reason why we're counting them is so that, how many, the God's presence is going to reside on them, why is it a month late? It should have been counted a month earlier. That's the first thing we need to understand. So let's talk about it a minute. Let's talk about, people always say when you count somebody, you can't, and, they have a census now. There's a problem when you count people. You know what the problem is? You feel like a number. That's the problem. The problem is like, yeah, 1, 2, 3. Now, what is the potential danger when you count individuals? Here's what the mystics tell us is the potential danger. Let's say, we're a group. We're a group, we're all together, we're working on this project, every one of us. Okay, great. Now imagine I start to go through each person. I say, there's this guy, that one, and I point to each one. Now, what might happen is each person will have to be judged on their own merit. And that's sometimes scary. And this is a very important thing, guys. There's a very important thing. It's a verse in the prophets. It says, Hatznei lechetz, go walk in modesty, walk in humility. And I want to tell you, it's a dangerous thing for people who are not modest and humble. It's very dangerous. Because imagine like this. Imagine you see a guy, and he's like, he's a very wealthy guy, and things are going great for him, and he just keeps talking about what a big shot he is, and he keeps saying things. Now, let's say you see this. Well, not you, because you're a good person. Let's say somebody else sees this, and they're having hard times. And they're really just as good as the other guy, but for whatever reason, God has arranged that they have hard times right now. So they start feeling to themselves, hey, why does this guy have all the good stuff? Why is he so wealthy? Why is he so happy? Why is it so rough for me? At that moment, there can actually be a judgment on that show-off because he makes the other person feel bad. And why is he having things better? Did he really deserve it? And what could happen is he can have his own personal judgment on him now. Does he deserve all of this stuff that he's going flaunting? And the other person feels bad about it. And that is one of the problems of the counting. Because on one level, you all want to be part of a group. Everybody wants to say, listen, hey, I'm not saying I'm the greatest thing in the world, and I'm part of this group, and we're all pulling our weight in this group. But once a person all of a sudden starts to stand out and shows off and is flaunting himself, then it says that he can actually be judged. Does he deserve more than the other person that feels bad because he's flaunting what he has? And that's one of the rationales why we count with the half a coin. What's a half a coin mean? Why not a full coin? Do you ever think about that? Why do they count with half a coin? How do they count with a full coin? What's the reason for that? And the answer is because the half coin shows you're part of a whole. You're not just, your own thing. I am, okay. Don't count me and say to me that I should be judged on my own. Just say, I want to be part of my group. And this is very important, to be part of a good group, because you do not want to be part of a bad group, because when that bad group is judged, if you're a part of that bad group, even if you might be better, you need to have special merits to get out of it because you've associated with that group. So you want to be part of a good group, and you also want to be able to go and at the same time say, hey, I don't want you to focus and say I'm the superstar and just look at me, because maybe I don't deserve that. I give a half coin because I'm part of a larger group, a larger coin. Okay, not me. I'm standing out. That's the reason generally the count was made with the half coins. Now, I said to you before, this count's a little bit different because the term it says is count each head, each goal, each human being. And this count was different. Actually, this count, each person said their name to Moses, to Moshe, and they each stood out. Why? What was this count about? So let me go back a second to what I asked you earlier, and I said that the count seems to be a month late. Because if this count is because God is going to reside his presence on the Jewish people, that happened on the first day of the month of Nisan. This is 30 days later. The count was on the first day of the next month. So let me explain something to you. I'm going to go back on one of the principles we talked about, and I'm going to tie this together in a lot of things we've talked about in the past couple of weeks and make it a little bit deeper and flesh it out. So I talked to you a few weeks ago. I said when the story happened about Passover, so the people did not earn their own individual greatness. They were part of the community. That happened in the month of Nisan. In the month of Nisan, they were all, not that every person was so great. As a matter of fact, the Jewish people were absorbed into Egypt, and they were very close to becoming Egyptian. So, but they came out as part of a whole group. And that's why I mentioned to you all, I said, the astrological sign of the month of Nisan, which is usually April, is Aries, which is sheep, because sheep follow the leader. This month, the month of Iyar, which is May, is a sign of Taurus, which is the bull. Why? Because a bull goes on his own. You put the yoke on him, and he goes. The count, it's for God's presence to reside on the people. But now they're going as individuals. And that's why this count is different. It's not with the coins, it's by the person themselves, by the head, by their names. And that's why the count happens in the month that represents the process of becoming the individual. First, you want to be part of the group. Yes, I want to associate with a good group. Okay, we have people from the Kehila here, which is my shul, and we have people from the Tiv, and these are good groups. You are associating with people who are of like mind, who want to do something good, and that you become part of the group, and that's the power. That's even why we've had, unfortunately, with this coronavirus, there's been problems of having 10 people praying together, and we have the minyan, because we say each one is not good enough, or is good enough, but it's hard on your own. Can you imagine like praying for 3 hours and have complete good intention and not daydreaming a little bit? Right? The guys from my shul, my community here, I ask themselves that question also. But I know that if I'm with all of us, so maybe I space out of 1 minute, but you're pulling up the slack because we're part of one greater group. So the count here, which is a little different, I'll explain what it is. one explanation is done the month of individuality, not the month of when you're part of the community, but it's a month where the individual starts to express themselves. Another explanation is like this. Sometimes there's certain laws we have about when you first start something, like you meet someone. There's day one in a relationship, and things are a little bit, iffy, you don't know. There's a certain point where things become established. We usually call that a month. It's called a chodesh. The chodesh means means to renew, and it's a cycle. It's the lunar cycle. And therefore, and there are laws like that. For example, a person comes to a town in Talmudic times, they lived there for a month, they already had the laws of a resident of that town to pay for the taxes, to pay for the keeping of the poor. But if they were there for a week or two or three, it's not so much. So after a month, God counts us. Other explanation now is because now we already have had God's presence for the month. Now we're already living in that reality. It's not just a transient thing. Oh, it was a great experience, but it's not part of our world. Now it's part of the world. Now it's part of our own consciousness. And that is the deeper meaning of this count. This count was not really to say how many, which is, there's a reason why it is, but this count, the word in the Torah is called pikudim. Pikudim means to count, but it also means to assign a job. This story is everyone getting their individual role. And that's what this count's about. And that's why it happens the month later when God's presence is residing, or the month of the individual expressing, because every person in the group needs to have a special role. Think about it. I used to like watching basketball when I was a kid. I can't watch it too much anymore because, when I was a kid, we would call the way people play today chuckers. People just throw the ball up all the time. When I was a kid, I remember it was all this teamwork. And the guys probably weren't as good as a lot of the guys today, but they played as a team. And I remember, I remember when I was a little kid, I remember the team that I was living in New York. I remember the team I liked. And there was one guy, he became a senator, Bill Bradley. And I don't know how athletic he was, but he had an amazing shot. And that was his role. And they had all the plays, and it was designed to give him his role. And everyone had their role. So the first step is the step of you're part of the group. And the second step is, what is your mission? And that is this count. It's assigning everyone their unique role. And I want to explain to you that really is also this concept of the flags. Okay? What is this flag? What's the flag thing? So it says, there's a teaching that says that when God told Moshe that they were going to have the flags, and they would have 3 here, 3 there, 3 there, 3 there, Moshe was afraid to be jealousy. Moses was afraid to be jealousy. People would say, I want to be the star. I want to be this. I want to be that role. So it says God said to him, no, don't worry. Because the same way the Jews are encamped with 3 tribes, it was Judah and Judah and Gad. Judah. Oh, yeah, Judah. I'm sorry. It was Judah, Yisachar, and Zvulun. That was this 3. And the other one was another 3. Was Menashe and Ephraim and Binyamin. Those setups that I'm gonna tell them to do, their flags, they're each four different directions of the world. That's the same exact way they carried the coffin of their father, Jacob. When Jacob died in the land of Egypt, he told the brothers, his sons, carry him up in the coffin, and this is how you have to go. You 3 here, you 3 brothers there, you 3 there, you 3 there. And so God tells Moshe, don't worry, they're not going to be jealous of one another because they're going to be assigned the same role as Jacob assigned to the original sons, the tribes, the first 12 sons of Jacob. They'll have the same roles. They won't be jealous. Ladies and gentlemen, that kind of begs the issue, right? I mean, you read the story in the Torah that the brothers had jealousy of each other. So how did that solve the problem? What did that mean? So I want to tell you something very, very deep. Listen to this. And this is the key of why they wanted the flags, what they represent. There is a story in the Talmud about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was a great sage. And he was during the time of the Roman persecution. And the Romans were taking the great sages of the time and they were killing them. And there's a story of the 10 martyrs, the 10 great sages of the time, and they killed them. And the Talmud records all the different things that happened. Rabbi Akiva was one of these 10 martyrs that the Roman king Hadrian killed during the Roman persecution, during the time of the destruction of the temple. So Rabbi Akiva, the way they killed him was they took iron combs with sharp points, and they were flaying his skin off of his body. No one's eating dinner now. I mean, this is pretty heavy. But they're flaying the skin off his body. Now, when this is the time, it is the time of the Shema. So he says the Shema, and he finishes, and he says, first he starts saying the Shema, and the students say to him, this far you're going to go? They're torturing you now, and you're going to say the Shema? Like, I don't know, scream, yell, something, I don't know. He's saying the Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's what he's saying now when they're about to kill him. And he told them an amazing thing. He said, my whole life I'm waiting for this moment. And now I'm not going to do it. So he says the Shema. And then when it gets the word God is one, Echad, he elongates the word. He says, Echad, one, God is one. And at that moment, his soul leaves him. And a heavenly voice says, praiseworthy is Rabbi Akiva, whose soul left on the one. He said one. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean his soul left on one? And why is that so amazing? And why do you want his soul to leave on one? And what do you mean he was waiting his whole life for this? What does that mean? So I want to explain to you something. I want to give you first the key. The key is that everything in the Torah is on many, many levels. So it's also on the mathematical level, meaning words have, every letter has a numerical value. And if you calculate the value of certain words, you will find they line up with other words. So the Hebrew word echad is spelled Aleph Chet Daled. It adds up. Aleph is 1, it's the first letter. Chet's the 8th letter, 8. And Daled is 4, 4th letter, and it adds to number 13. Okay, good. Now, if you take the word love in Hebrew, ahava, and you add it up also, it also comes out to 13. Aleph is 1, 8 is 5, that is 2, and then 5. So it's 13. Oh, wait a minute. What is the connection between one and love? So I mentioned this last night in a different context, but I'll ask you all here this question. Do you think that people love each other if they're more similar or if they're less similar? Do opposites attract or do similars attract? What do you think? So I guess we're not talking now, so I guess I ask myself. Okay. So the answer is like this. The answer is generally it is similars. So then wait a minute. That's true. What happens to husband and wives? Anyone who's married for more than a day knows men and women are completely different ways of seeing the world. So how does the world created if similars are the thing that connect? So how does the male-female connection happen if similars are the things that connect? The answer is very, very deep. Here's the answer. When you go and it's a hot day and you run and you're sweating, what do you want to drink? A nice hot tea, right? No. You want a cold drink. You're freezing cold. Do you want a freezing cold drink? No, you want a hot tea. Why? Because the idea of what you're drinking is to complete you. You're hot and you need to be completed, your other half, right? The male-female is becoming one. And therefore, the difference between male and female is because they complement each other, they become one. Love in that sense is when it's the two opposites, not because they're opposites, because usually when you want to talk to people, you like people that are more similar to you. But by the male-female, what happens is they become one, and that's their opposite. Yes, you like people that are more similar, but here it's not in order to be I'm me and I like my wife. No, me and my wife are one. That means love is really the understanding of one. That's what it is. Now, what was happening to Rabbi Akiva? When you think of God, you say, wait a minute, where did I come from and where am I going? So a person lives their lives and they say, I don't know where I came from, I don't know where I'm going, and so they're busy with Rabbi Akiva. It was very clear to him that he comes from God and he's going back to God. And therefore, the love that he had was the feeling of oneness that he had. And that was why he said, my whole life I'm waiting for this. When he said the Shema, he would think, wow, I just want to connect to my source. And therefore, when the time came, he was able to do it. Because love is the idea of connecting to become one. And that's why he said one, echad, and his soul left, because he became whole at that moment. Because that moment, he really became one with God. Now, I want to say one more idea with this, and then I'll try to tie it all together for us. If you look at the Hebrew word echad, which is one, it's an aleph, that's one, and then a chet, which is 8, it's the 8th letter, and then a dalid, which is a 4. And the sages tell us that also represents, like when you say the Shema, it's Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Shema Yisrael Shem Hashem Echad. Israel was Jacob, was Yaakov. What is one? Aleph is one. That's Jacob. How many children did he have? Well, he had 8 children from his main wives, which is Rachel and Leah. That was 8. And then he had 4 children, 2 each, from his other 2 wives, Bill and Zilpah. So what does the word echad, one, mean? It means, in terms of the story of Jacob, is that he had Jacob, his 8 children, and his 4 children. And that's what I told you once before. I explained the same idea to you, the idea of the way things expand. I explained this to you one time. If you remember, I said a 3-dimensional object has in it, if you expand and express it, it has 12 lines, right? If you count this, you get 1, 2, 3, 4. And say you get 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll count and you'll see that on a 3-sided object, it expands to 12. So Jacob expands to the 12 children. What does this mean? It means like this. When God said to Moshe, don't worry, they're not going to be jealous, it was because when Jacob sent his children to carry up his coffin, and it was, before they had a lot of fights between them, they had a lot of issues, but now was the moment of truth. The father had died. They were like, there was a lot of clarity in the world. They all recognized that they were the children of this person. A person who has a few kids, Sometimes you could see in your children, you know what you see in your children? You see yourself, right? You see, oh, this is one of my traits. This is one of my traits. And you see in yourself. So when the children, when all 12 realize they come from one, there's no jealousy anymore. Because they realize we're all part of one system. We are the expressions, the different expressions of the one system. That's what the Jews saw on Mount Sinai. They saw the angels and they said, listen, we want to express, it's like if you have like a country. So you have, let's say, the army, you have the navy. Now, the army and navy, if they start fighting against each other, that's very bad. Why is it so bad? Because that means that they don't realize they are all working for the government, the one, right? You have a king and you have an army and a navy. They each have to function as an expression of the one thing that they're rooted in. The children of Yaakov in the beginning, they were all, oh, I want myself, I want my thing, and therefore they couldn't get along. Once they realized, whoa, wait a minute, we're all expressions of Jacob, everyone had their flag. Everyone had their unique place. And that's exactly the counting. I explained to you also by Passover. In the beginning, you say, okay, I nullify myself. I see that we're all from the source. And then once you realize that, you can take on a unique special mission because you're expressing it from the one source. And that removes all jealousy. People are jealous because they don't realize that since it's all one pie and you have your role in this expression from the one source, and no one could step on my toes. No one could take my role. It's impossible. And that was this week's Torah portion. It's the dynamic of being part of the group. The counting normally is done by everyone's together. This week in the Torah portion, they were able to go to the next level. That's why it's done in the month of the individuality. Because in this portion this week, represents the idea when they really realized the one source. God's presence was coming to reside in them. They remembered on Mount Sinai when they saw God was one, and they saw the angels expressing and doing God's will. And they said, we want to have a flag just like that. We don't want to say, I'm the boss. I don't want that at all. I want to say, I'm the army, and I'm the navy, and everything that I am is because I am connected with the whole group, all connected back to the source. That's the depth of what we're talking about. And ladies and gentlemen, this is very practical for all of us. It comes home if you think about it, because you have to go and really look at the world that way. Person has to understand, where do we come from? And when you say there's a source, God in the world, you realize that, then what happens is you say, okay, what is the mission that he wants for me? There's no way he's going to have redundancy here. And therefore, we're all doing something special. So one level, you're going to have to see it as a team because we all have shortcomings. But in the other level, what's going to happen is that when you take your role, if you take it from the right place, if you take it from the expression that we're children of the one source, everyone has a mission. We have in this call, we have Jews, we have Noachites, people have missions, and that's your flag. And when you have your flag, your role in the kingdom becomes the expression of the oneness of God. That's what it is. Literally, it's unbelievable. And that is the ultimate connection. Shema Yisrael Hashem Hashem Echad. Hear, Israel, the Lord our Lord is one. When you hear the one, and you say, okay, wow, what role am I going to have in that expression? Then that's what I want to be doing. And that's exactly what happens here. This counting is assigning them their unique mission because they came to that understanding and that level where they weren't going to mess it up because they really first nullified themselves to understanding there's one and then to be an expression of that and not an expression of I'm doing my own thing. I'm just going to, like in basketball, I'm just going to keep shooting the ball. No, 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 no. We have, even in basketball, it's the same analogy. We have a team, we have a goal, we have a higher cause, and therefore, since we have a higher cause, the cause is we want to win the game, so we each now have to take a role and play as a team because you have a higher source. In life, the higher source is God, and everyone's mission has to come out from that. Okay? That's my thought for the night, and we'll open up some questions.